Wow, pretty powerful presentation. Thank you. Dr. Huber has agreed to take some questions if anyone would like him to elaborate further. We have 2 floor mics. I think if you do have a question, please make your way to one of the floor mics.
Is this on? Thank you. I just want to say I just read an article with the past few weeks out of a publication, and it was mentioned like in the next, I think 3 years approximately, the worldwide, the amount of Roundup glyphosate being used would be almost double. So I can't remember the exact figures, but it was in the millions of tons. And it seems also that our agriculture is just advocating, big agriculture advocating just to continue use of this. So it's really quite a serious issue. Thank you.
I have mechanical ears, or electronic ears. They keep the wind from blowing through, but I have a very difficult time hearing a lot of you. Was there a question there?
I thought it was a comment. I was having trouble hearing also.
If there's a... Yeah. Did you have a question for me on that? Or more a comment? I apologize.
Okay, it was just a comment on basically the amount of glyphosate being used, and over the next 3 years to 4 years, it was almost going to double in use and worldwide. And I was wondering if you had any comment on that.
Comment on
the use of and the expanded use of it. There's seems like there's no way of hardly stopping this unless there's.
Okay, I'm not. Can you?
Okay.
Someone.
Yeah, I can't understand that.
Said that in the next 3 years, they say that the use of glysophate will be doubled, and you have a comment on that. Did you hear that?
What you see is that as you increase the use of glyphosate, you just speed up the train wreck, if I can put it that way. We're already at that point where a lot of that's already cast in stone. But as soon as we had resistant weeds, our rate escalated almost tenfold. If you look at the study of Dr. Benbrook that he recently completed for the European Union, he predicts that just the introduction, permission to grow genetically engineered crops for glyphosate or 2,4-D or dicambra tolerance will increase their herbicide use 15%. We've already seen an increase, a fourfold increase in fungicide use. I would have taken my graduate students 300 miles to see Goss's wilt 30 years ago, like we could see just outside the back door anywhere in North America the last 3 or 4 years, because we've increased the susceptibility by introducing that AIDS effect in our crops. So,
I guess the first thing I'd like to say is I know what they've been telling people down where you're from, but up here, our conventional farmers believe that glyphosate's gone 3 days after it's applied. That's the bill of goods that was sold up here. So to hear, just how long the persistence is and how serious the effects are, it's shocking that the regulators let it get by. So I guess the question I'd ask you, do you know of any jurisdictions or any groups that are actively working to try and get glyphosate banned?
yes, there are several laboratories that are trying to develop biological degradation or enhance the biological degradation of glyphosate in soil, if that's the question.
No, sir. I'm wondering about people that are politically working to get rid of glyphosate, to make it illegal. Do you know of anybody?
I don't know of any on glyphosate. Certainly Proposition 37 in California for labeling GMO crops is a critical need. In the last week, I think the probability of that has shifted. Monsanto and Dow and a number of the Cargill, a number of the processing companies are spending $1 million a day in negative advertising against passage of the GMO labeling. And it's having an effect. But if all that bill does is require labeling if it has a genetically engineered component. Doesn't prohibit selling it or anything else. What they know is that if you had a choice with the information that's available, you're going to reject it. You only have to reject 5% of a product in a grocery store and it'll be pulled off the shelf because shelf space is so critical in the retail market. That would be the most critical step. No legislatures had the courage to do it. When Vermont had the bill moving in their legislature and Monsanto told them that they would sue the state, tie them up in court and bankrupt them essentially if they passed it, and they backed down. It's going to take a major calamity, and it's coming. If you've been into a tumor institute, see all your neighbors sitting there because of breast and prostate, pituitary cancer, and you wonder what's changed. And I have that experience and that opportunity. And you talk to the doctors. You talk to one surgeon on inflammatory bowel or Crohn's disease. Look at the autism. Those things are cast in stone. We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. It's not an unknown phenomenon to the company. I think we're sitting on the verge of another tobacco-type lawsuit, and it may take that. Brazilian government is suing Monsanto, I understand, for $5.5 billion for birth defects from glyphosate. Other than the initial announcement, I haven't seen any follow-up on that. But that was the initial announcement on it. You look at the doctor's reports from Argentina. You see what our experience is. When a swine or a dairy or cattle producer goes out of business, neighbors say, well, he wasn't a very good manager. And he starts growing corn and soybeans to keep in business. His love was probably that dairy, as my father's, when he finally convinced him that he ought to sell the cows because us three boys had left home. He was 84 and still trying to milk 100 cows a day with a couple of high school students to help him. Sold the cows, and 6 months later he had 200 head of Black Angus out there because he said he was lonely. It's a serious situation for us.
I want to thank you for a powerful presentation. I hope you can hear me. I was chair of the Organic Agriculture Protection Fund in 2002. We started a class action here to sue Monsanto and Bayer for damages. I don't know if you're aware of that. But I've been dealing with these guys for 10 years now. It was 10 years ago this fall that we started that lawsuit. And we failed, of course, but I learned a lot about the mentality of not only Monsanto, but the regulators and our governments and our politicians. And I believe it's absolutely criminal behavior on all three of those groups, because they knew what Sarah proved to us. They know. And they regulated to such a point that after 90 days, they weren't going to study, so they could turn a blind eye and say it's safe. And they brainwashed us all into thinking that we can't farm without Roundup. And in Saskatchewan here, we farm 1 million acres without Roundup as organic farmers. So, if I was a Minister of Agriculture, of Canada. I understand you wrote a letter to President Obama. What would you tell me if I was the Minister of Agriculture?
If I got the question right, you asked me what President Obama's stand was?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know that too.
Well, I wrote a letter 17th of January last year, the Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, very private letter, personal letter, asked that it be held confidential because the things that I was reporting were things that could negatively impact our exports. I had some concern at the time. I was the APS coordinator for the USDA Plant Disease Recovery Program, and felt as a responsible scientist it was essential that I notify the president of the new entity and also these other factors that have the potential to impact our exports. That letter was leaked, changed my life somewhat. Have a hard time keeping a computer clean and a few things from the number of emails, but as a result of that and trying to figure out who leaked that, my USDA friends, colleagues tell me they think it was someone from the soybean board because it was sent to them and to Monsanto apparently before it even went to risk management. 2 weeks later, did respond to risk management's request for detailed information and people that they could contact that were familiar with the problems. Gave that information. 6 months later, they still hadn't contacted any of them. On the Roundup Ready alfalfa, by way of the grapevine, I understand that that decision was made at the White House, not at the Secretary of Agriculture's level. So I don't know whether that answers it. Maybe I was enough of a moving target.
But you're right. I mean, we're waiting for that smoking gun. I was in the pharmaceutical industry at the time that thalidomide problems were in Canada, and in the U.S. they didn't have the thalidomide problems because somebody in the FDA stopped the introduction of the drug. So, it's sooner or later there's going to be, I'm not sure if it's going to be deformed babies, but something's going to happen. And we're on the right side of history here. So I really want to applaud you.
I don't think you have to do too much speculation to see how the dots are connected in the political arena and regulatory arena, that area. I spoke to a group of pediatricians last week at Tacoma, Washington, and they recognized all of the symptoms but had no idea how to approach the cause. Now, those that have recognized it will tell you that within 3 or 4 days or a week of getting away from the genetically engineered feed, you'll start to see a change. You look at Ed Pedersen's work in Denmark, and within 2 or 3 months, his medical bill almost disappears in his swine project or program, very large swine producer. And birth defects drop way down. He hasn't eliminated his birth defects because he can't find his other feedstocks that haven't been sprayed with glyphosate as a ripening agent. He's working on that process. But he's eliminated his imported soybeans. I have 2 graduate students from Purdue, one in Argentina and one in Brazil, that have been hired by the Chinese government to find them a zero GMO source of soybeans to replace North America's shipments. Now we're hanging by a thread if we want to maintain a market.